This tape will discuss the preparation of a maxillary bicuspid for porcelain fused to metal restoration. Again, this preparation incorporates an area where the final restoration will be veneered with porcelain. The lingual aspect will consist primarily of metal, and thus a conventional chamfer preparation will meet with a proximal shoulder, which runs into a facial shoulder and again into a proximal shoulder. The junction between shoulder and chamfer is continuous. The occlusal reduction follows normal anatomical configuration, and on the functional lingual cusp, a functional cusp bevel is present. The preparation steps are once again similar in that conventional depth grooves will be prepared on the occlusal surface, and again these depth grooves will extend onto the lingual surface to create guidance for the functional cusp bevel. Occlusal reduction follows these depth grooves, and then the axial reduction is prepared in two stages. Initially, on one half of the tooth, the shoulder will wrap at least 1 millimeter lingually to the proximal contact point, and then once satisfied and having used the remaining half of the tooth as a guide, the preparation can be completed. In this case, we will use the diamond to prepare all of the depth grooves. Since the tip of the diamond is approximately 0.8 of a millimeter in width, we can accurately gauge the depth of our depth cuts as we place them. Without having to change the orientation, immediately the depth cuts for the functional cusp bevel can be placed, at which stage the orientation of the rotary instrument is changed and the depth cuts on the buccal incline of the lingual cusp are positioned. If desired, these cuts can be linked together by making a cut through the central fissure of central groove. Once you have verified the actual depth of these depth cuts, proceed and reduce the islands of tooth structure in between these grooves. Extend your occlusal reduction adequately into the marginal ridge area without damaging the adjacent tooth. And as always, be sure to standardize the amount of tooth reduction as you proceed. Once satisfied with the clearance obtained in this manner on the mesial half of the tooth, you can proceed and complete the occlusal reduction. Again, lingual depth grooves can be placed as a guide to maintain burr orientation during the reduction. The lingual chamfer is prepared in a conventional manner and carried into the interproximal area, where contact is broken as if you're preparing a complete veneer crown. At this stage, little consideration is given to creating the shoulder which will be prepared from the facial aspect. Once proximal clearance is obtained, the orientation is altered, and the remaining portion of the tooth preparation will be prepared from the facial aspect. The same diamond is used, and parallel to the lingual preparation, depth cut is placed of approximately 1 millimeter in depth in the cervical aspect. It is this depth cut, in conjunction with cuts in the line angle areas, that will serve to give us adequate reduction for the porcelain veneering area of this restoration. Again, the islands of tooth structure are eliminated from in between these depth cuts. And with the half DT diamond, the preliminary configuration of the shoulder preparation is established. Note that it takes considerable effort and a brushing type motion to remove this tremendous bulk of tooth structure as the shoulder is roughed out with this diamond. The shoulder preparation is then carried adequately into the interproximal area so that it extends at least 1 millimeter to the lingual of the proximal contact. Note the lip of unsupported tooth structure that remains. Any obviously unsupported tooth structure can be readily removed even with the rounded tip of this diamond. Once satisfied with the preliminary configuration of the shoulder and its interproximal extent, we can switch to the 1D square tapered diamond. We recommend that you use this diamond in the slow speed. Minimally required shoulder width is 1 to 1.2 millimeters. The width of the 1D diamond is 1 millimeter at its tip, so again it can be quite useful as a guide. Note the alignment of the diamond, not supported by the actual wall of the tooth, but rather positioned in such a way to result in a perpendicular cavo-surface margin, so that no unsupported tooth structure will remain. The orientation of this diamond is adjusted as indicated during the smoothing of the actual shoulder preparation. At this stage, the mesial aspect of the tooth preparation is carefully evaluated. Shoulder width should be adequate, shoulder and chamfer should be continuous, and the occlusal anatomy should provide for adequate clearance. Once satisfied, proceed with the distal aspect of this tooth preparation. In order to follow normal facial contour of maxillary posterior teeth, it may be desirable to give a slight curvature to the facial wall. The degree of this curvature is primarily determined by the alignment of the tooth in the dental arch and the anatomy of the adjacent teeth. Here, a slight degree of curvature is imparted to the facial surface in order to enable us in the laboratory to conform the shape of the restoration to the curved configuration of the other teeth. Once the distal aspect of the tooth preparation has been completed, it may not be necessary to carry the distal aspect of the shoulder as far interproximally as was necessary on the mesial. In this case, it probably would be wise to extend the shoulder slightly further into the interproximal area. This can be incorporated as part of the finishing procedure, during which, of course, again, all line angles will be rounded off and blended together. The completed tooth preparation should have a supragingival shoulder, which extends far enough interproximally no unsupported tooth enamel remains anywhere near the margin. The shoulder extends far enough to the lingual aspect and is continuous with a smooth chamfer that once again equals half the width of the 1/2 DT diamond. All line angles are rounded. A functional cusp bevel is present on the lingual cusp, and a slight degree of curvature may have been imparted to the facial wall. In occlusion, adequate clearance is present, 1.5 millimeters on the functional cusp and a minimum of 1 millimeter on the non-functional cusp in the areas where metal will be placed, whereas in the areas that will be veneered with porcelain, a minimum of 1 to 1.2 millimeters of tooth structure has been removed to provide us with the space for the restorative material. This concludes this tooth preparation.